For today's video, I do hope that you brought your swimwear because we're gonna be swimming in some beautiful reverb. This here is the Eventide Blackhole. It was just announced the other day. It's a very interesting little pedal and it's very suitable for synth lovers. More about that later. If the name sounds familiar, it's because it's actually the same algorithm that can be found in the plugin version that they released a while ago. It can also be found in, for example, the H9 as well as the Eventide Space. But this here is its own little thing. It's a very fun little effects unit. It can do small reverbs, big reverbs, super spacey reverbs, and yes, it can also drone quite a bit with the freeze function, and we're gonna check out all of that in today's video. Today's synth exploration is sponsored by Skillshare. Skillshare is an online learning community with thousands of different classes in photo, video, music, and more. For a limited time, you can use the link in the description to get a free trial of premium membership. Not all pedals are created equal. Most pedals are not made for line level audio, but this one actually has a switch, so you can switch it from guitar to line level, which is really handy for using it with synths and, say, a DAW. On the back, we can switch the input from mono to stereo. There's also the two outputs for a stereo signal, the switch from guitar to line level, as well as expression, pedal, input, USB connection, and the power connection. The expression pedal input can also be used with a TRS to MIDI cable in order to control the black hole using, say, a MIDI controller, your Digitact, or something like that, because most of the controls can be controlled using CC messages. When we take a look at the front here, it might seem like there's just a couple of controls, but that's because there's primary and secondary functions. So when it's not lit, it's primary. When it's lit, it's secondary functions. And we also have two buttons over here that we can use. This knob is the mix knob. This one controls the decay. So here, if we set it like this, it's normal decay. This setting, it's an inverse decay. Over here is the feedback knob, and we can set it to infinite. Here we have the EQ. For the highs and one for the lows. And over here is the size of the reverb. For secondary functions, we have mix yet again, we have delays, it's a pre-delay. And then we have resonance here for the filters for the EQs. Then we have the depth or intensity for the modulation, as well as the rate of the modulation. So that was the intensity of the modulation as well as the rate of the modulation. You can see here under what it actually does as well. And then we have the out level here. So while Blackhole is available as software, it's also very nice to have it here as a pedal because it's a little bit more creative, just tweaking some knobs and coming up with these interesting, beautiful soundscapes. This button lets you save presets as well as indicating whether freeze is on or off. You can also load presets. So here you can toggle between 5 different presets and we can load it. And it's also possible to save a preset from the unit itself. And of course, one of the major features is that you can freeze this effect. So one way to use this is with a lot of feedback here. And let's bring up the mix, something like this. Let's increase the size and let's try it here. So what do I think about the Blackhole from Eventide? Well, I think that if you want like really, really big reverbs to swim in, I think this is, yeah, you can't really go wrong with it. So one thing I really like is that we have a filter section, you have resonance, so you can actually freeze the sound and then play with it a bit. It's also very cool to just changing the size of the reverb while it's frozen. You can create some really interesting soundscapes that way. So if that's your thing, you can't really go wrong with it. In terms of I/O, I would of course have preferred to have just 2 inputs instead of the one and using a TRS cable to get stereo input, but in this little form factor I kind of see why they went that route, so it doesn't bother me all that much. Of course, having dedicated DIN MIDI would also have been really nice, but that MIDI is available, you just have to use an adapter. You don't get an adapter with it, so you have to buy one for yourself, but it works and I can see why they sort of didn't go that route. They wanted to keep it small, compact, so kind of makes sense. I'm also guessing that synth users like us are kind of the secondary market. Guitarists are probably still the big market that they're going for. So I'm glad that they've implemented the MIDI stuff, but yeah, I kind of see why they wouldn't put like full MIDI on a small pedal like this. In terms of negatives, there's really not that much to say. It works as advertised, it sounds good, it has the functionality that you'd expect from a reverb like this. However, one thing that you might find annoying is the shift functions. Sometimes I do confuse where I'm at, you know, what parameter I'm actually tweaking. Of course, this is a lot about like getting to know your product, so I don't really foresee it being a big problem. But if you don't like secondary menus, secondary functions, this of course relies on that. You have to hit this button, but now I'm kind of nitpicking for the sake of finding something negative. So what are some good alternatives then? Well, I don't have a lot of experience with reverb pedals per se. Like I don't have a ton of pedals laying around. I just use a few. Of course, whether you get something like this or the bigger H9, which has this algorithm, I mean, that's a question you should ask yourself. Do you want this or the H9 instead? The main difference for me is that this is much more hands-on, more playable. The H9 have fewer controls, dedicated controls on the unit itself, but of course, many more effects, algorithms. If you just want something on a budget, I think still the Zoom CDR lineup is really good. CDR 70 or CDR 100 maybe, I'm not too sure, but you should check out the Zoom CDR if you want something on a budget. But I do think that given that this algorithm is in their software, in the H9, in the Eventide space, so you have to ask yourself, is this the unit you want, or do you want any of the others if you want this particular sound? So that's the big kind of question you have to ask yourself. So what do you think about the black hole from Eventide? Leave your comment down below. And as always, I hope you enjoyed today's video. And here's a message from today's sponsor. Let's talk a bit about today's sponsor, Skillshare, because my channel is a lot about learning and Skillshare is an online learning community. They have different courses in everything from audio mixing to photo to video, and it's less than $10 a month. For a limited time, you can use the link in my description to get a free trial of premium Skillshare membership. And if I could talk about one course that I think you should check out, it's Learn How to Mix Your Music with Young Guru. I recommended it many times before. I think it's an excellent place to start if you're unsure about mixing, so go ahead and check it out over at Skillshare. Another course that was recommended to me by a viewer is this course about how to compose ambient music. It's also available on Skillshare, so check it out with my link in the description. So if you're still around, thank you so much for watching today's video. Have a great day.